They stumbled into the cowboys' camp half alive and forced him to break every rule he ever made. The cowboy woke before the sun, just like he did every morning. The cold air wrapped around him as he stepped out of his small tent and looked across the wide, quiet land. The sky was still dark blue, and the stars were slowly fading. He liked this time of day because it belonged only to him. No voices, no footsteps, breaths, no trouble, just the wind and the soft sounds of nature.
His camp was simple, a small fire pit made of stones.
A wooden table he had built with his own hands. A few tools hung on a post near the trees. Everything had its place, and everything followed his rules. The most important rule was always the same. Breaths. Stay alone. Stay safe. He believed that people brought problems. Wherever he had gone before, there had always been noise, demands, and broken promises. Out here, far from roads and towns, he felt free. He worked with the land, not against it. He gathered water from a nearby stream, cooked his food over the fire, and slept under the open sky when the weather was kind.
It was a hard life, but it was honest and it was quiet.
That morning he made a small pot of coffee and sat on a log, watching the light touch the hills in the distance. He checked the ground around his camp, looking for tracks like he always did. Most days he saw only animal prints, deer, birds, sometimes a fox. He never saw people, and he liked it that way. After he finished his drink, he packed his tools and went to check the fence he had built to keep animals away from his supplies. He moved slowly and carefully, always listening. The land taught him to pay attention to small sounds. A broken branch, a bird flying away too fast, a shadow where there should be none. By midday, the sun was high and the air was warm. He returned to his camp and cooked a simple meal. He ate alone, as always, and felt the same calm settle in his chest. This was the life he had chosen. This was the life he planned to keep. As the afternoon passed, clouds gathered in the sky. The wind picked up, and the air grew cooler. He added more wood to the fire and secured his tools in case of rain. He had learned to respect the weather. It could change fast, and when it did not care who you were. The first drops of rain fell just as the light began to fade. He pulled his coat closer and stood near the fire, watching the land disappear into a gray blur. That was when he noticed something that did not belong. At first, he thought it was a shadow. Then he thought it was an animal. But it moved in a way that made his heart slow and his hands go still. Two shapes were coming through the trees at the edge of his camp. They stumbled, stopped, and then stumbled again. His first thought was to step back and let them pass. That was his rule. Do not be seen. Do not be found. He moved closer to his tent, ready to disappear into the dark if he had to. But the figures came closer to the firelight, and he could see them more clearly now.
They were people, a woman and a young boy.
Both looked thin and tired. Their clothes were worn and wet from the rain. The boy leaned on the woman, and the woman looked like she was using all her strength just to stay standing. They did not call out. They did not run. They simply walked forward, slow and unsure, like they were not even certain where they were anymore. The cowboy felt a tight pull in his chest. This was exactly what he had worked so hard to avoid. Strangers, trouble, breaths. Questions he did not want to answer. The woman finally saw the fire and stopped. Her eyes widened, and for a moment she looked afraid. The boy looked up at her, then at the cowboy, frowned. His face showed more curiosity than fear.
"We don't mean any harm," the woman said.
Her voice was weak but steady. "We just need a little water."
The cowboy did not answer right away. He stood still, watching them.
He looked at their hands, empty. He looked at the ground around them, no one else in sight. Around. Every part of him wanted to turn away. He could step back into the trees, let the fire burn low, and they would move on. That was the safe choice. That was the rule. But the boy swayed on his feet, and the woman caught him before he fell. The sight of it made something in the cowboy shift, remembered a long time ago when he had been the one who needed help and found none.
He took a slow breath and walked to his table.
He picked up his water jug and held it out, keeping a few steps between them. "Here," he said. His voice was rough from not being used much. "Drink slow." The woman's face softened with relief. Breath. She thanked him and took a careful sip before giving it to the boy. The boy drank more, then wiped his mouth with his sleeve. "We've been walking for days," the woman said. "We got lost. Rock. The roads out here all look the same." The cowboy nodded but did not ask questions. "Questions led to stories, and stories led to staying." The rain grew heavier, and the wind cut through the trees. The boy shivered, and the woman pulled him closer. The cowboy looked at the dark sky and then at his small tent. There was only room for one, and he was not about to offer it. But the fire was warm, and the ground near it was dry. "You can sit there," he said, pointing to a spot near the flames, "till the rain stops." The woman hesitated, then nodded. Breaths.
She guided the boy to the spot and sat down with him. They held their hands out toward the heat, and their shoulders slowly relaxed.
The cowboy stayed standing, watching them. He felt like a guest in his own camp now. The quiet he loved was gone, replaced by soft breathing and the crackle of the fire. The boy looked up at him. "What's your name?" he asked. The cowboy paused.
Names had weight. Names made things real.
"You can just call me Cowboy," he said. The boy smiled at that, like it was a great joke. The rain fell for a long time. The woman told the boy stories in a low voice, trying to keep his spirits up. The cowboy listened without meaning to. The stories were simple, about places they had seen and small moments that made them laugh. As the night grew darker, the rain slowed. The clouds began to break, and a few stars peeked through. The cowboy realized that they were still there, still sitting by his fire. Bah, still breathing his air. He had broken his rule. He had let strangers into his face, into his quiet world. He did not know yet what it would cost him. All he knew was that the camp did not feel empty anymore, and for the first time in a long while he was not sure if that was a bad thing. The night passed slowly. The fire burned low and the wind moved softly through the trees. The cowboy sat on a log across from the woman and the boy. He kept his coat wrapped tight and his eyes open, even when his body told him to rest. Old habits were hard to break. Trust did not come easy to him. The boy had fallen asleep first, his head resting against the woman's side. She stayed awake longer, watching the fire and the cowboy in quiet turns. Neither of them spoke. The silence was not heavy, but it was careful, like both sides were walking on thin ground. When the sky began to change color, the cowboy stood and added more wood to the fire. The soft light of morning spread across the land. Birds started to sing, and the world felt alive again. The woman slowly woke the boy. He rubbed his eyes and looked around, then smiled when he saw the fire was still there. "Good morning," he said to the cowboy. The cowboy nodded. He poured water into a small pot and set it near the flames. He took out some dry food he had saved and placed it on the table. "You can eat," he said, "but don't take more than you need." The woman thanked him and helped the boy sit at the table. They ate slowly, like they did not want to rush the moment. The cowboy watched them from a short distance away. After they finished, the woman stood and walked a few steps closer.
My name doesn't matter much, she said, but I want to thank you. You didn't have to help us,
The cowboy shrugged.
you were cold and tired.
That's all. The woman studied his face, like she was trying to understand something deeper.
"Where are you headed?" he asked, even though part of him did not want to know. "There's a small town to the east," she said.
We heard there might be work there, a place to rest for a while. The cowboy nodded. He knew the town she meant. It was not close, and the path was not easy.
That road can be rough, he said.
You'll need food and water. He went to his supplies and filled a small bag with what he could spare. He placed it on the table. The boy's eyes lit up. "You're really nice," he said. The cowboy felt a strange feeling in his chest. He had not heard words like that in a long time. The woman looked at the bag and then at the cowboy. "We can't take this," she said. "You can," he replied. "I have enough."
She hesitated, then nodded.
"Thank you." They stood there for a moment, like they were waiting for something else to happen. The cowboy thought this was where they would leave. This was where his camp would return to quiet. But the boy looked around, then back at the cowboy. "Why do you live all the way out here?" he asked. The cowboy opened his mouth, then closed it. He had many answers, but none of them felt right. "Because it's quiet," he finally said. The boy nodded like he understood. Even if he did not. The woman placed her hand on the boy's shoulder.
"We should go," she said. They took a few steps away from the fire, then stopped.
The woman turned back. "If you ever come to town, you'll have a place to sit and rest," she said. The cowboy gave a small nod. He watched them walk toward the trees, their figures slowly fading into the morning light. For a long time he stood there, listening to the sound of their footsteps disappear. The camp felt empty again, but not in the same way as before. He went back to his work, but his hands moved slower. His thoughts drifted. He kept looking toward the path they had taken. Braish. By midday the sky grew dark again. Clouds rolled in, and the wind picked up. The cowboy felt a sense of unease he could not explain. He heard a sound that did not belong to the land. Voices. Faint, but close. Moved quickly, stepping behind the trees near his camp. He watched as two men came into view. They looked around, scanning the ground. "Tracks lead this way," one of them said. The cowboy's heart beat harder. He knew they were not here for him. The men followed the path the woman and boy had taken. The cowboy stayed hidden, but his mind raced. He remembered the woman's tired eyes, the boy's small smile. Desperation, he stood there, torn between his rules and something new growing inside him. After a long moment, he stepped out from the trees.
Hey!
He called. The men turned, surprised.
Have you seen a woman and a boy pass through here? One of them asked. The cowboy looked at them, then at the open land behind them.
Brat! No, he said. The men exchanged looks, then moved on, their footsteps fading into the distance. The cowboy let out a slow breath. His hands were shaking. Right. He had lied. He had protected them.
That night, the fire burned brighter than usual. The cowboy sat alone, staring into the flames.
He realized that even though the woman and boy were gone, they had left something behind. They had changed the way he saw his rules. Pray. The land was still quiet. The sky was still wide. But the cowboy was no longer alone in his thoughts. The morning came with a soft light that spread across the land like a gentle promise. The cowboy stood near the edge of his camp, holding a warm cup in his hands, but he barely noticed the taste. His mind was still on the two figures who had walked away the day before. He kept seeing the boy's small smile and the woman's tired but thankful eyes. He told himself they were gone now. That was how things should be. People came and went, and he stayed. That was the balance he had chosen. But the quiet did not feel the same anymore. He tried to work. He checked his fence, gathered fallen branches, and cleaned his tools. His hands moved, but his thoughts drifted. Every sound in the distance made him stop and listen. Every shadow made him look twice. By midday, the wind carried a faint noise that did not belong to the land. It was not a bird. It was not the rustle of leaves. It was a voice. The cowboy froze. He turned slowly, scanning the hills and the trees.
The voice came again, clearer this time. It was the boy.
Hello? The cowboy's heart jumped. He moved toward the sound, stepping carefully through the tall grass. Narration. When he reached a small rise, he saw them. The woman and the boy were standing near a dry stream bed. The boy was holding the bag of food the cowboy had given them. The woman looked worried. Relief washed over the cowboy, followed quickly by concern. You shouldn't be here, he said as he walked closer.
The woman looked up, surprised. We didn't mean to come back, she said.
The path we took led us in a circle. We've been walking for hours. The boy looked tired again, his steps slower than before. The cowboy glanced at the sky. Clouds were gathering, and the air felt heavy. Come back to the camp, he said. The weather's going to turn. The woman hesitated. We don't want to cause trouble. You won't, he replied. Not today. They followed him back. The fire pit was cold now, but the cowboy quickly started a new flame. The boy sat down on a log inside, like he was finally letting his body rest. The woman stood near the edge of the camp, unsure of where to place herself. You can sit, the cowboy said, pointing to the table. She nodded and joined the boy. The rain began again, soft at first, then heavier. The sound of it filled the air, washing over the land. The three of them sat close to the fire. The warmth pulled them together, even if they did not mean for it to. The boy poked at the dirt with a small stick. Do you live here all the time? He asked. The cowboy nodded. Don't you get lonely? The question hit harder than he expected. He stared into the flames. Sometimes, he said quietly. The woman watched him, her eyes kind but careful. They stayed like that for a long time, listening to the rain. The camp felt smaller now, but also safer in a way the cowboy could not explain. When the rain slowed, the woman spoke. Those men you saw, she said. "They've been following us for days." The cowboy looked at her. "Why?" "They want what little land we have back home," she said. "We refused to leave, so we left instead." The boy looked down at his hands. The cowboy felt a slow burn in his chest. He had seen people like that before. He had run from them once himself. "You can't keep walking without a plan," he said. "We don't have one," the woman admitted. "We just keep moving." The cowboy stood and walked a few steps away. He looked out across the land, wide and open. He had chosen this place because no one else wanted it, because it was far from everything. Narration. He thought about his rules. Stay alone. Stay safe. He thought about the lie he had told to protect them. He turned back. "You can stay here for a bit," he said, "till you figure out where to go next."
The woman's eyes widened.
Are you sure?
The cowboy nodded, even though part of him felt like he was stepping off a cliff. The boy smiled bright and wide. "Thank you." Days passed. They fell into a simple rhythm. The cowboy showed the boy how to gather wood and how to spot animal tracks. The woman helped cook and clean. The camp slowly began to feel like a place meant for more than one person.
The boy laughed often.
The sound echoed across the land, filling spaces the cowboy did not know were empty. At night they sat by the fire and shared stories. The woman spoke of their home, of a small house and a garden that the boy used to help tend. The boy talked about his favorite things, like watching the clouds and counting stars. The cowboy found himself talking, too. He told them about the road that had led him here, about the choices he had made, and the mistakes he carried. The woman listened without judgment. The boy listened like every word was a treasure. One evening, as the sun set in soft colors, the cowboy noticed movement on the far hill. A shape, then another. He stood slowly. The woman saw his face change. "What is it?" she asked. Go to the tent," he said. "Both of you!" They did not argue. The cowboy watched the figures draw closer. His heart beat steady, but heavy. The men stepped into view, the same ones from before. "We knew they'd come back," one of them said. The cowboy stood tall. "This is my land," he replied. "You should turn around." The men laughed. The cowboy did not move. He did not raise his voice. He simply stood between them and the camp. The wind blew dust across the ground. The moment stretched. Finally, one of the men shook his head. "Not worth the trouble," he said. They turned and walked away, their shapes fading into the distance. The cowboy let out a slow breath. The woman and the boy came back out. The boy ran to him and wrapped his arms around his waist. The cowboy froze, then slowly placed a hand on the boy's back. The woman smiled, her eyes full of something like hope. That night the fire burned bright. The sky above them was clear and full of stars. The cowboy looked at the two people sitting beside him and felt something he had not felt in a long time. He felt like he belonged somewhere. His rules were still there, but they were changing, not breaking. Changing into something better. The next morning felt different. The air was warmer, and the light touched the land in soft gold colors. The cowboy stood near the fire, watching the boy help the woman gather small pieces of wood. Their quiet teamwork made the camp feel alive in a way he was not used to. He told himself not to get used to it. Change always brought risk. He had learned that long ago. Breaths. Still, He could not ignore the small smile that came to his face when the boy proudly carried a bundle of sticks back to the fire like it was a great prize. They ate together that morning. The woman shared a simple meal she had learned to make on the road, and the cowboy showed them how he cooked his food over the flame without burning it. The boy laughed when the cowboy pretended to be very serious about the right way to stir a pot. After breakfast, the cowboy decided to show them more of the land. He believed that knowing your surroundings meant knowing how to stay safe. They walked along the edge of a wide field, where tall grass moved like waves in the wind.
He pointed out where the ground dipped near a hidden stream and where the rocks could be slippery after rain.
The boy listened closely, asking questions about every mark in the dirt. "What made that one?" the boy asked, pointing to a deep print.
"The cowboy crouched down. That's from a large animal. You can tell by how wide it is and how deep it goes."
The boy nodded, like he was learning a secret of the world. The woman walked a few steps behind them, watching with a soft expression. She had not seen the cowboy this way before. Frowned in despair. Less guarded. More open. They reached a small hill that overlooked the land. From there, they could see far in every direction. The cowboy liked this place. It reminded him how big the world was and how small his worries could be if he let them be. The woman took a slow breath. "It's beautiful," she said.
The cowboy nodded. "That's why I stayed."
They stood there for a moment, letting the wind move around them. On the way back, the cowboy noticed something that made his steps slow, a broken branch near the path. Fresh. He stopped and raised a hand.
"Stay here,"
he told them. He walked ahead and looked at the ground. Brief. There were marks in the dirt. Faint, but clear to his eye. Someone else had been there. His chest tightened. The land that had always felt like a shield now felt like it had cracks. He turned back to the woman and the boy.
"We need to be careful today,"
he said. The woman's face grew serious. "Do you think they're back?" The cowboy nodded.
Maybe not, but we won't take chances.
They returned to the camp, and the cowboy began to prepare. He moved supplies into hidden spots near the trees. He showed the woman where to go. If she heard a signal he would make, a sharp whistle that cut through the air. The boy watched, wide-eyed.
"Is this a game?"
he asked. The cowboy knelt in front of him. "It's just being ready," he said gently. The boy nodded, trusting him. The day passed slowly. The wind carried every sound far, and the cowboy listened to them all.
A bird taking flight, leaves brushing together.
The soft steps of the woman moving around the camp. As the sun lowered, the land grew quiet in a way that did not feel peaceful.
The cowboy stood near the edge of the trees when he saw them. Two shapes moving low, trying to stay hidden.
He raised his whistle and gave a short, sharp sound. The woman grabbed the boy's hand and led him to the spot the cowboy had shown them.
The cowboy stepped forward, making sure he was seen. The men stopped. One of them raised his hand slightly, like he was trying to look harmless.
"We just want to talk," he said.
The cowboy did not move. "There's nothing to talk about,"
You're hiding them,
the man said.
"We know they're here."
The cowboy felt his jaw tighten. "This is my land." "You should leave." The second man stepped closer.
breath. "You don't want trouble." The cowboy's voice stayed calm. "Neither do you." The wind blew between them, carrying dust across the ground. The moment stretched long and heavy. The first man looked past the cowboy, trying to see the camp. The cowboy shifted slightly, blocking the view. Finally, the men backed away. "This isn't over," one of them said. The cowboy watched them go until they disappeared into the distance. He stood there for a long time, letting the tension drain from his body. When he returned to the camp, the woman and the boy came out from hiding. The boy ran to him again, holding on tight. "You were really brave," the boy said. The cowboy swallowed. "I just did what I had to do." That night, they sat closer to the fire than usual. The stars above them felt like silent watchers. The woman spoke softly.
You didn't have to do this for us.
The cowboy stared into the flames.
Maybe I did, he said.
The woman smiled, not with relief, but with something deeper. As the fire burned low, the boy fell asleep between them. The cowboy looked at the land around him, the place he had once chosen to be alone. Now he realized he was choosing something else. Bust. He was choosing to protect. The morning arrived quietly, like it did not want to disturb what had grown in the camp. The sky was clear, and the air felt fresh, washed clean by the night wind. The cowboy stood by the fire, holding a cup of warm water, watching the light move slowly across the land. Behind him, the woman and the boy were still asleep near the tent. The boy had curled up close to her, and she had one arm resting gently around his shoulders. The sight made the cowboy pause. Breath. He had not seen something like that in a long time. Not this close. Not in his world. He turned back to the horizon. He knew the men might return. He also knew that even if they did not, the woman and the boy could not stay forever. Breath. The land was not built for long-term comfort. It was a place to survive, not to settle. But still, part of him wished time could slow down. When the boy woke up, he stretched and smiled at the cowboy like every morning was a gift. "Did anything happen while we were asleep?" the boy asked. The cowboy shook his head. Breaths. Just the stars moving across the sky. The boy laughed. "I like that." They ate together, sharing the last of the bread and fruit the cowboy had stored. The woman thanked him again, her voice soft but strong. After the meal, she stood and looked out toward the east. "We can't stay much longer," she said. "You've already done more than we ever expected." The cowboy nodded. He had been waiting for those words, even if he did not want to hear them. "I know," he said. The boy's smile faded a little.
"Do we have to go today?" The woman knelt beside him.
"We need to find a place where we can start again, somewhere safer." The boy looked at the cowboy. "But this place is safe." The cowboy crouched down to meet his eyes. "It's safe for now," he said gently. "But the world is bigger than this camp. You should see more of it." The boy thought about that, then nodded slowly. The cowboy went to his supplies and packed a larger bag this time. He filled it with food, water, and a few tools that could help them on the road. He hesitated before adding one of his own items, a small knife he had carried for years. It was worn, but sharp and reliable. He placed it in the bag. The woman noticed. "You don't have to give us that," she said. The cowboy shook his head. Breath. "I want to." She did not argue. They stood near the edge of the camp, the place where the path began. The wind moved through the grass, and the land stretched wide and open, full of unknown turns and quiet promises.
The boy walked up to the cowboy and held out a small stone.
"I found this by the stream," he said. "You can keep it, so you remember us." The cowboy took the stone. It was smooth and warm from the sun. "I won't forget," he said. The woman stepped forward. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she reached out and placed her hand on his arm.
"You gave us more than food and shelter," she said.
"You gave us a chance to keep going." The cowboy felt a tight feeling in his chest. He nodded, because he did not trust his voice. They turned and started walking down the path. The boy looked back once and waved. The cowboy raised his hand in return. He stood there until they were just shapes in the distance. Then until they were gone. The camp felt quiet again, but it was not the same kind of quiet as before. The cowboy went back to the fire pit and sat down. Breath rolled the small stone in his hand, feeling its smooth edges. The land around him looked the same, but he knew he was not. Days passed. He returned to his work. He fixed the fence, gathered wood, and checked the stream. But now, when he did these things, he thought about how he would explain them to someone else. How he would show the boy where to step and tell the woman where the ground was soft after rain. Sometimes he caught himself looking down the path, half expecting to see them come back. One afternoon, as the sun hung low, he saw a single figure in the distance, his body tensed, ready for trouble. But as the shape came closer, he saw it was not one of the men. It was a traveler, alone. Tired, carrying a small pack and walking slow. The cowboy felt his old rule rise in him. Stay alone. Breaths. Stay safe. He stood still, watching. The traveler stopped when he saw the camp. He raised a hand, not in demand but in greeting. The cowboy looked at the fire, at the stone in his pocket. Breath. He took a slow breath and walked forward.
"Water?"
he asked. The traveler's face lit up with relief. The cowboy handed over his jug, keeping a small distance, just like before. The traveler drank and thanked him. They did not talk much. They did not need to. The traveler rested for a short while, then stood and moved on. The cowboy watched him go, feeling something new settle inside him. That night, as the stars filled the sky, the cowboy sat by the fire and thought about his rules. He still believed in being careful. He still believed in listening to the land.
But he had learned something else, too. Being alone was not the same as being strong.
Strength could also mean standing in front of someone else, sharing what you had. Letting the quiet be filled, even just for a moment. The wind moved softly through the trees, and the fire crackled low. The cowboy held the stone in his hand and looked up at the wide sky. Somewhere out there, a woman and a boy were walking toward a new beginning. And here, in this small camp on the edge of the land, a cowboy had found a new way to live. Not by closing his world,